I'm Celine Harlow, born with both a gift and a curse, a built-in lie detector that punishes anyone who lies to me. I remember the day I discovered this ability. I was just a child, sitting cross-legged on the living room floor. "Celine," my father began, his voice gentle but firm, "we want you to understand something very important. In this family, sons and daughters are equal. No one is favored over the other." My mother nodded, placing a hand on my shoulder. "Yes, we believe in fairness. Every child deserves the same love, the same treatment, the same inheritance, no matter their gender." I blinked at them, trying to process their words. "So, you're saying you don't care if I'm a girl?" "Exactly," my mother said, smiling. "It doesn't matter if you're a boy or a girl. We love you the same." I wanted to believe them. I really did. But the moment the words left their lips, a strange, piercing chime rang in my head. I froze. I didn't understand it yet, didn't realize what it meant. Before I could ask, my father's phone buzzed urgently. He glanced at the screen, his expression tight, and then his mother's eyes widened with worry. "We have to go," he said, grabbing his coat. "It's urgent." I tried to protest, but they were already heading for the door. I watched as they got into the car, waving briefly before driving away. Minutes later, news reached me that their car had met with a tragic accident. Both of them were gone. The sound I had heard that day, faint yet unmistakable, had been the first warning of my gift. A lie had been spoken, and though I hadn't yet realized its significance, the world had begun teaching me its cost. After my parents' tragic accident, my paternal grandparents took me in, but it was never out of love. They were drawn by the massive wealth my parents had left behind, and from the very start, it was clear they were never satisfied with me, simply because I was a girl. They had adopted a relative's son, a boy they favored above all, and everything they did was aimed at securing the family fortune for him. I was nothing more than an obstacle, and they made that perfectly clear. One evening, they prepared a lavish dinner and insisted I join them at the table. The aroma of the food was intoxicating, the candles flickering softly, casting warm shadows. "Celine," my grandmother cooed, her smile sweet but strained, "try this. It's a special recipe, just for you." A familiar faint chime rang in my head. I froze, and then my stomach twisted. I knew immediately that something was wrong. My grandparents' practiced smiles faltered for a split second before they smoothed them over. "Don't be shy," my grandfather said, his tone deceptively warm. "It's for your own good." I refused to eat. I couldn't. And for my defiance, they punished me, locking me in the basement as if my life held no value at all. From the darkness below, I could hear them laughing and talking with their adopted son, enjoying the meal I had rejected. But fate has a way of correcting injustice. Moments later, I heard screams, the sound of crashing, and then, silence. I did not know how long I had been locked in that basement, hours, maybe a full day. Time stretched in the dark, thick and suffocating. The poisoned meal sat untouched on the small tray near the door, its bitter scent lingering in the air. I listened to the distant echoes above me, muffled voices, hurried footsteps, then another silence. Eventually, another sound broke through, sharp knocks, authoritative voices, the creak of a door forced open. "Police, anyone here?" My heart lurched. I tried shouting, but my voice came out thin and cracked. The officers must have heard something because within moments, heavy boots descended the basement steps. A flashlight beam sliced through the shadows. "There's someone down here." A pair of hands pulled me, and the brightness stung my eyes. "You're safe now," an officer said, helping me out of the darkness. The neighbors called. They were worried, no one had seen you or your grandparents for 2 days. The moment I stepped outside, a suffocating stench filled the air, thick, rotten, and impossible to ignore. The dining room was a grim sight, 3 bodies collapsed around the table. My grandparents and their adopted son were dead. The officers quickly suspected poisoning, likely done by an employee they had mistreated for years. In the end, their own cruelty came back to destroy them. I said nothing. I didn't need to. I stood at the threshold, trembling, as paramedics zipped the bodies into separate bags. The officer who freed me placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. "You're lucky you didn't eat with them." I remained silent. When the last body was taken away, I stood alone in the quiet aftermath. The people who had tried to control my life, twist my destiny, and claim what was mine had been erased in a single stroke, by consequences they had brought upon themselves. I was left untouched. My original inheritance remained fully intact, and, as if fate had passed judgment, the entire fortune of my paternal grandparents now belonged to me as well. My fortune had become a beacon for opportunists. Just as my paternal grandparents once schemed for control, my wealthy rural maternal grandparents soon took notice. Their preference for sons over daughters ran deeper than anything I had seen. Behind their quiet smiles and gentle manners, they hid far more calculating intentions. At first, they treated me with care. Gifts, kind words, soft laughter, they played the perfect hosts, masking their true intentions. I allowed myself a fleeting sense of comfort, though a small, wary part of me never let its guard down. One summer afternoon, they brought me and my uncle to the river under the guise of a family outing. The water glimmered under the sun, calm and inviting, but I already suspected their plan. They knew I couldn't swim, and they intended to use that to finally get rid of me and claim my inheritance. "Celine," my grandmother called, her voice syrupy and warm, "come closer. Just a little swim before we eat our lunch." I hesitated. "I don't know how to swim." My grandfather replied, "We're here to keep you safe." And then it came, the sound I knew too well, piercing and sharp. My blood ran cold. Something was very wrong. Before I could act, the air around the river seemed to shudder. The sky darkened suddenly, clouds twisting like black smoke. Then the river, once tranquil, rose violently, surging forward in a wall of water that slammed against the riverbank. My grandparents tried to save their son, but the current had other plans. We were caught almost immediately, our cries swallowed by the roar of the flood. Water churned around us like a living thing, dragging branches and debris past. My grandparents struggled, clawing at the water, their son swept under the torrent, his terrified screams fading in the chaos. I fought desperately, my fingers gripping a jagged tree root, my legs thrashing against the current. Every instinct screamed at me to survive. And somehow, I did. When the water finally receded, I was alone, soaked, and trembling. The riverbank was littered with debris, and the three of them, my maternal grandparents and my uncle, were found bloated and lifeless. Villagers who had gathered assumed it was a tragic accident. No one suspected their greed, and no one knew the murderous plan they had tried to carry out. I stood there, the magnitude of what had happened slowly sinking in. I was truly alone now, but richer than ever. My parents' fortune, my paternal grandparents' wealth, and my maternal grandparents' assets now belonged to me. Soon, I realized an additional truth: wealth indeed attracts predators, but it is also the key to survival. The courtroom was cold and formal, the kind of place where files and documents carried more authority than shouts or tears. I sat on the edge of the bench, small and quiet, watching the adults maneuver like predators circling prey. The judge's gavel struck the desk, demanding attention. "We must appoint a guardian to oversee Miss Harlow's assets until she comes of legal age," he said, scanning the room. The man chosen was introduced as Mr. Edward Calloway. Sleek, sharp-eyed, with a polite smile that didn't quite reach his eyes, he stepped forward, bowing slightly. "Celine," he said, extending a hand, "I am here to manage your estate and ensure your inheritance is protected until you are of age." The familiar chime rang faintly in my ear, but I still shook his hand. My grip was small but firm. I studied him carefully, his posture, the slight twitch of his lips, the way his eyes flicked to the papers before him. He had been chosen by the court to protect me, yet my instincts screamed caution. "Interesting," I murmured to myself, though quietly enough that no one else could hear. Every word he spoke, every practiced smile, was analyzed in a fraction of a second. By the time the judge had finished his pronouncement, I knew one thing: Mr. Calloway was a man used to controlling things, and he believed children were tools, not threats. That day marked the beginning of a new phase in my life. Alone, yet armed with immense wealth and a gift no one else knew, I began to observe, to learn, and to calculate. How adults behaved, how they tried to manipulate each other, how authority could be used and bent. I absorbed it all. Mr. Calloway claimed to serve my best interests, but I had survived deceit, greed, and betrayal. I knew appearances were never what they seemed. In this world, protection came at a price, and I would not be anyone's pawn. From the shadows of that courtroom, I began my quiet education in power, and I intended to master it all. 1 week after the court appointed him, Mr. Calloway arrived at the estate with a proposal that made my skin crawl. "Celine," he said smoothly, adjusting his tie, "I think it would be better if you stayed at my home for a while. That way, I can personally oversee your education and ensure your inheritance is protected." I froze, my small hand resting on the edge of the table. Something about the offer didn't sit right. The familiar sound rang in my head, sharp and unmistakable. My instincts flared. He lied. Every word, every gesture, every polished smile carried intent, carefully concealed but unmistakable to me. "Why would I need to leave my home?" I asked softly, tilting my head. "Everything I own is here. My own room, my things, my tutors, and servants." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "It's simply for your own good." I studied him carefully. The twitch at the corner of his lips, the slight narrowing of his eyes when he thought I wouldn't notice, all of it confirmed what my gift had already told me. He intended to control me, to isolate me, so managing my fortune would be easier. I smiled sweetly, hands folded in my lap. "I appreciate your concern, but I'll be more comfortable here, where everything is familiar to me." His eyes flickered, just for a moment. And in that moment, I knew he realized he had underestimated me. He thought his legal authority could bend me to his will, but he didn't know one thing: I could see through lies, and they carried serious consequences. "All right, just let me know if you change your mind." I offered a sweet, practiced smile as I looked at him with feigned innocence. By now, I understood that my ability only punished lies when the speaker intended to seriously harm me. Otherwise, the warnings were mild, a soft chime for a half-truth and a loud gong for a complete lie. Mr. Calloway did not give up easily. After I refused to leave my estate, he simply changed tactics. One afternoon, he arrived unannounced, stepping out of his car with 2 children beside him, his son, Oliver Calloway, who was 2 years older than me, and his adopted daughter, Angela, who was my age. He introduced them with a warm smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "I thought you might enjoy having friends your age," he said lightly. I recognized the calculation instantly. Bringing them here wasn't an act of kindness, it was a strategy. If he couldn't move me, perhaps his children could. My first instinct was to refuse. I didn't want any part of his schemes, and I certainly didn't want friendship manufactured for someone else's benefit. But then I looked at Oliver and Angela more closely. Oliver had an easy confidence about him, the kind that didn't lean into arrogance. When he spoke to me, he asked questions as if he genuinely wanted to know me. Angela was quieter, observant, with a soft smile that reminded me of the calm before sunrise. There was no lie in their voices. No sharp warnings. Just sincerity. Against my better judgment, I let them stay. What began as polite tolerance grew into something unexpected. We explored the gardens, studied together in the library, and sat on the veranda sharing stories until the sky turned dark. I found myself truly laughing for the first time in years. Their presence lightened the estate in ways I didn't think possible. By my last year of senior high school, the 3 of us were very close. Oliver, Angela, and I moved through life like a small constellation, 3 bright points connected by familiarity and trust. It felt so real. But even then, small moments unsettled me, like the blank expression on Mr. Calloway's face whenever he watched us from a distance. We were sitting under the tree behind my estate. Angela worked on sketching dress designs. Oliver was busy studying a book on business and marketing. I closed my notebook and looked at him. "Oliver," I asked casually, "what exactly does your father handle at the company?" He never really explained it to me. He froze. A subtle tightening appeared around his jaw, and his fingers paused on the page. Then he let out a laugh that didn't match his expression. "Oh, you know. Meetings, paperwork, business events, nothing interesting." A chime rang in my head, soft, delicate, but unmistakable. He wasn't telling the whole truth. Before I could press, he kept talking. "Anyway, did you check out that new cafe nearby? The one with the delicious milkshakes? I tried it last week, thought you'd like it." I instantly realized it was a smooth, practiced diversion, completely unnecessary if he had nothing to hide. I just nodded, but I remembered it. The soft chime meant a half-truth, something left out. Not enough to cause harm, but not fully honest either. And hearing it once told me it wouldn't be the last time. 2 months before my 18th birthday, Angela and I were in my room, surrounded by fabric scraps, university brochures, and open magazines. She had been talking nonstop about dress designs earlier, but now she was too quiet. I lifted one of the brochures. Have you thought about where you want to study after graduation? Maybe the three of us could end up in the same university. Her scissors paused mid-cut. Barely a second, but enough. She laughed, but it was thin, strained. Us? Together? I don't know yet. A soft chime rang in my mind. Not danger. Not malice. But still a lie. I pretended to be absorbed in the pamphlet. Well, Oliver is already in business school. You've talked about fashion before. And I'm considering business school myself. We could figure something out, right? It'd be nice if the three of us stayed together. Her fingers curled around the fabric. Yes, we'll stay together, nothing will change. Her smile faltered for a moment, just long enough for me to see the uncertainty behind it. Worry. Fear. Something heavier. Then, a loud gong rang inside my head. I winced from the sudden pain and disbelief. Are you okay? Angela asked gently. I shook my head. I have a severe headache. I need to rest. Can you come back another day? She nodded politely, unaware that I already knew something was about to happen. 3 weeks before my 18th birthday, it was our graduation day. The day felt lighter than usual, as if the weight of the past had lifted, even if only for a moment. After all the work and struggles, Angela and I had finally made it. That night, a grand celebration was held in my honor. The ballroom was filled with influential guests, wealthy people whose introductions and approval would matter as I prepared to enter the elite world. Crystal chandeliers hung overhead, and servers moved steadily among the crowd, offering food and drinks. This was more than a party, it was a test, a chance to show I could navigate the world I was about to inherit. Oliver was there, as usual, offering congratulations with his calm, effortless charm. He shook hands, exchanged pleasantries, and even teased Angela and me lightly about our future plans. Yet, despite the laughter and chatter, I couldn't ignore the tension between him and Angela. At first, it was subtle, a quick flash of irritation in Oliver's eyes, a brief tightening of Angela's jaw, but I felt it immediately. My instincts told me something was wrong. It wasn't long before I saw them slip away. Oliver's hand brushed against Angela's briefly as they moved toward the far side of the estate, toward a shadowed corner where no guests dared wander. Curiosity, mixed with an unshakable sense of foreboding, pulled me after them. From a distance, I watched them argue. Their movements were sharp, urgent, desperate even, but the night wind carried away their words. I strained to hear, but nothing reached me. I wanted to move closer, to intervene, but before I could take another step, a hand touched my shoulder. I turned sharply. Mr. Calloway stood there, his expression calm. Celine, why did you leave the celebration? You know this is a great opportunity for you. I forced a smile, masking the tension in my chest. I needed some fresh air, I said softly. He gave a slight nod, his expression unreadable. Come back with me. There are important people here you should meet. Reluctantly, I followed him, keeping my eyes on the shadows where Oliver and Angela had disappeared. My stomach twisted as the distance between us grew, and my gut screamed that whatever they were arguing about was very serious and important. The rest of the night passed in a blur of polite conversation and champagne flutes. I laughed when expected, nodded at compliments, and shook hands with people whose names I would need to remember. But my mind kept drifting back to the secluded corner, to the tension in Angela's posture, to the way Oliver's expression had seemed sharper than usual. In the morning, terrible news came. My chest tightened, and my hands trembled. It said that Mr. Edward Calloway had slipped and tumbled down the grand staircase in his home. His head struck a massive statue at the foot of the stairs, causing severe trauma and heavy bleeding. He was pronounced dead before reaching the hospital. The news of his death spread quickly. The official report called it an accident. The authorities offered no further investigation, and the family wasted no time. His funeral and burial were hastily arranged, carried out within days. Flowers were gathered, prayers were said, and condolences offered, but everything felt rushed, almost perfunctory. I attended out of obligation. I stayed quiet, watching more than speaking. Behind the polite faces and soft condolences, I sensed something else, the relief, the hidden glances, and the people carefully avoiding any questions that might reveal too much. I could feel the world around me shifting again. Someone had benefited from his death, though I didn't know who. I only knew I had to be careful, more careful than ever. My 18th birthday arrived with the kind of grandeur only old wealth could produce. The estate staff decorated the ballroom from floor to ceiling, and by evening, the place was filled with powerful families, business magnates, celebrities, and reporters. This was the night I formally received my full inheritance, every asset, every property, every account that once belonged to my parents and grandparents was now under my name. I smiled, greeted guests, and accepted congratulations. Angela and Oliver arrived together, both dressed impeccably, both wearing smiles that were just a little too controlled. Angela hugged me first and handed me a beautifully wrapped box. "Happy birthday, Celine." Her voice was warm, but her eyes flickered. I also need to tell you something." That hesitation instantly tightened my chest. We sat in a secluded spot for some privacy and had a heart-to-heart talk. She continued, "I was accepted into the London College of Fashion. It's a huge opportunity. Classes start soon, so I'll be leaving tomorrow." "Tomorrow?" I repeated. "Angela, why didn't you tell me earlier?" Her fingers tightened around the champagne glass. "I wasn't sure I'd get in. And everything has been so chaotic lately. I didn't want to distract you." A soft chime rang in my head. Another half-truth. Before I could press her, Oliver stepped forward and handed me a smaller gift bag. "Happy birthday, Celine," he said softly. His expression was unreadable. "You deserve everything good." "Thank you." I observed him. "When did you find out about Angela's admission?" His shoulders stiffened slightly, and his eyes shifted away. "A while ago," he answered lightly. "We just didn't want to overwhelm you before your big day." Another soft chime echoed in my mind. Another lie. My gaze moved between them. Whatever tension had existed since graduation was still there, threading itself tightly between them. Angela avoided Oliver's eyes. Oliver watched her too closely. "Is everything all right between the two of you?" I asked quietly. Oliver's smile was too polite. "We're fine. Just tired." Angela nodded quickly. "Yes, you know, the funeral and burial procedures, and now the travel preparations." Two chimes sounded one after the other. Their lies weren't meant to harm me, but they were still lies. Later in the evening, before most guests even thought of leaving, Angela approached me with her purse already in hand. "Celine," she murmured, "thank you for the invitation. We should go now. It's getting late." "Already? You barely stayed." She didn't meet my eyes. "I still need to finish packing." Another soft chime. Oliver added, "I'll make sure she gets home safely, so she won't miss her early flight tomorrow." I forced a smile. "Of course. Take care." Angela hugged me without speaking. When she pulled away, her eyes were slightly red. Oliver held my hand gently and whispered, "Good night." I watched them walk out of the ballroom side by side. Their figures disappeared through the grand doors, swallowed by the night. Although I was exhausted from the previous night's celebrations, I insisted on accompanying Oliver to escort Angela to the airport. The early morning air was crisp, and the city streets were quiet. Angela was her usual composed self, but I could see the nervous flutter in her movements as she handled her luggage. We said our goodbyes at the gate. Angela hugged me tightly. "Take care of yourself, Celine. Study hard, and don't forget me." She walked away, and as her figure faded into the crowd, Oliver's hand remained on mine. I chose not to react. The next day, the news broke. Angela's plane had crashed in the middle of the ocean. Emergency crews searched the area, but the outlook was grim. She was listed as missing and later presumed dead. I felt the familiar hollow ache in my chest. It wasn't just grief, it was anger and disbelief. Oliver looked devastated. I decided to step in. He needed someone to steady him, to help him breathe again. Slowly, we began to move forward together. Attending the same university and taking the same course only deepened our connection. Study sessions turned into coffee breaks turned into long walks across campus, and soon, I found myself relying on Oliver's presence. His attention was constant. Subtle touches lingered too long. Compliments felt weighty rather than casual. Expensive gifts appeared on my desk for no reason. After his graduation, I finally asked the question I had been holding back. Oliver, what are we, exactly? I feel like you're becoming too involved with me. He stopped, looked into my eyes, and spoke with a calm certainty I had never seen before. Celine, I want to pursue you and marry you after you graduate. Is that all right? The words hung in the air like a weight. Part of me was startled, part of me was wary, and part of me wanted to trust him completely, especially since I didn't hear the familiar sound that would indicate a lie. I looked up at him, heart thudding. Yes, maybe we can try. His eyes softened, and he let out a relieved laugh. That's all I've wanted to hear. I couldn't help but smile, a little nervously. Don't think this makes you the boss now. He grinned, brushing a strand of hair from my face. I wouldn't dream of it. I just want to be by your side. That's all. And for the first time in a long while, I let myself believe it could be real. Oliver was a sweet and supportive boyfriend. He was thoughtful, generous, and attentive. He made me feel cherished in ways I hadn't allowed myself to feel before. Each day with him felt like a gentle reassurance that maybe, just maybe, happiness could last forever. One afternoon, curiosity got the better of me. I decided to visit his company unannounced. I want to see his office and his routine. As I walked past the rows of desks, I saw him speaking with one of his employees. Not just speaking, he was very close, leaning in, whispering. She laughed at something he said, and he smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Later, I teased him about it. He grinned, playful as ever. Celine, she's nothing to me. She can't compare to you. You're the one I love, the one I'll marry in the future. I believed him. I didn't hear the familiar sound in my head that usually warned me of lies. His sweetness and consistent devotion made me trust him. 2 years passed. I graduated, filled with pride and a sense of accomplishment. Soon after, our relationship reached its pinnacle, a grand proposal. Oliver knelt before me, holding a dazzling red diamond ring that caught the light with every subtle movement. Celine, he said, his voice steady and warm, will you be my wife? I smiled and said, yes. The following months were a whirlwind of wedding preparations. Invitations, floral arrangements, venue bookings, all meticulously handled. I allowed myself to be swept up in the joy, the excitement, the feeling that my carefully guarded life had finally settled into something real. Then, the night before the wedding, my phone buzzed. 2 new videos had arrived. The first showed a younger Oliver and Angela in his bedroom. They were hesitant at first, hands brushing nervously, eyes wide with curiosity and tension. Then they kissed, timid at first, but gradually growing more intimate, exploring each other as if discovering something new. Every glance, every touch was tender and clumsy, filled with a mix of excitement and uncertainty. My stomach turned as I watched, unable to look away, especially as the scene progressed into actions no normal siblings would ever engage in. The second video was far darker. It showed Oliver in a dimly lit room, controlling, dominant, and unrestrained. The employee I had seen at his office was there, along with 2 other women, all caught in his intensity. His touch was harsh, his movements aggressive, pushing limits that made my stomach churn. Every look, every laugh, every command he gave carried a mix of pleasure and cruelty. It was fetishistic, perverse, and utterly violent, a display of lust that left no room for consent or comfort. I sank to the floor, trembling, staring at the screen in disbelief. How had I failed to see this side of him? Why had my gift never thoroughly warned me about him? And then it hit me. Another possibility, darker than anything I had considered. He could have been telling the truth, that he loved me, that he wanted to marry me, and spend the rest of his life with me. And yet, a hidden, twisted version of himself existed alongside that truth. A double life, one for me, and another he indulged in secretly, without my knowledge. My heart pounded. The realization made my skin crawl. Suddenly, everything I thought I knew about him and our relationship came crashing down. The wedding had been grand, the garden bathed in golden light, flowers arranged like a painter's masterpiece, and guests dressed in finery that sparkled under the sun. We exchanged vows, our voices steady, our rings shining. In that moment, I became his wife. But my smile was not one of happiness. It was the smile of someone who had hastily set a trap. The reception began. Guests mingled, laughter and clinking glasses filling the air. Then came the moment for the video presentation, a tradition at such weddings. Instead of the sweet, curated memories of us, the screen shifted to the two videos. The room went silent. I watched Oliver's face turn ashen, panic flashing in his eyes. I asked him calmly, "Oliver, did you have a romantic relationship with Angela?" He stammered, "No, we didn't." I tilted my head, watching him. I didn't hear the usual sound, so I rephrased the question slowly and deliberately. "Did you have sex with her?" He panicked, words tumbling out of him. "No, I didn't do that with her. How could I do that with my own sister? That video is fake. It's edited." The words barely left his mouth when a loud, unmistakable gong slammed into my mind. My chest tightened, but I kept my composure. "And the violent, perverted things you did to those 3 women, were they real?" He opened his mouth to deny it, speaking quickly. "No, that's not true. It's fabricated. You know I wouldn't do something so disgusting." Another gong thundered inside my head. I stepped closer, eyes fierce. "I don't believe you. I know you're lying." Desperation overtook him. "I swear I'm not lying. May lightning strike me dead if I am." The words barely left his mouth when another deafening gong reverberated in my mind. I laughed, tears streaming down my cheeks, and screamed at him, "Liars go to hell." This time, the dark clouds gathered rapidly above the garden, swirling as if the sky itself were watching. A cold wind cut through the guests, carrying the scent of impending doom. Oliver's eyes widened as he noticed the unnatural darkness, the way the sun vanished behind the blackened clouds. "Celine," he stammered, his voice cracking. What's happening?" I didn't answer. I only watched as fear finally sank into his expression, the first genuine fear I had ever seen on his face. His hands trembled, his confident composure shattered. Deep down, he knew there would be no escape. Lightning split the sky with a deafening crack, the blinding white streak striking directly toward him. He froze mid-step, a scream caught in his throat, eyes wide with the stark, inescapable truth. His body crumpled instantly, scorched and lifeless. Guests screamed, scattering in panic and stumbling over one another. I stared at his charred form, my heart steady despite the chaos around me. Heavy rain poured down, muffling the commotion in the surrounding area. I alone remained calm, fixated on the man who had lied and deceived. Justice had arrived in a flash of divine wrath, not for me, but for everyone he had hurt. I arranged Oliver's funeral formally, though hastily. The mourners whispered about his messy private life and about me, calling me a harbinger of misfortune, since people around me seemed to die one by one. I ignored it all. Misfortune? How could it be misfortune when, as his widow, I inherited all his wealth? 1 month later, I found myself absent-mindedly stirring my coffee in a famous cafe, the steam curling up and mingling with the city noise. Then, a hooded figure slid into the seat across from me. I looked up, and froze. It was Angela. "You're alive?" I thought. "I didn't expect to see you again," I said cautiously. She smiled faintly, a sad yet resolute expression. "I wanted to see you and talk to you. There's something you should know. I sent you those videos." I motioned for her to continue, though unease curled in my stomach. As an adopted daughter, I once believed I had a chance with Oliver. The night I confessed my feelings, he took my innocence. I thought he reciprocated, but afterward, he became cold, telling me it was just for fun, not serious. After all, we were siblings in public. My anger boiled over, leading to a fiery argument on the night of our graduation. Her voice trembled as she continued. The confrontation escalated in our home. Dad witnessed our serious fight, and he revealed to us that I wasn't just adopted, that I'm his biological daughter, born of a mistress. "I didn't know," Angela said bitterly. "So I had inappropriate feelings for Oliver. We had sex." That truth, it caused Dad to have a heart attack. He fell down the stairs, and then he died. I shivered, realizing the chain of secrets that had led to so much tragedy. Angela continued, "After the funeral, Oliver said that even if we weren't real siblings, there was really no chance for the two of us because you're the one he liked," she said quietly. To make sure I wouldn't interfere with his plans, He blackmailed me with a copy of our private video and the CCTV footage. There was a blind spot in the footage showing that I was the one closest when Dad tumbled down the stairs. He threatened to ruin me if I told you. He said I'd be branded a slut and blamed for Dad's death. He forced me to leave the country and never return unless he allowed it. He promised to cover all my expenses if I obeyed. I leaned back, absorbing the revelation. Her voice grew quieter. Then, the plane crash happened. Some might call it bad luck, others call it fate. I survived. It was my husband who pulled me out of the water. Knowing what I had been through, he shielded me from the world. Everyone thought I was dead, and I used that to my advantage. I reached across the table, my fingers brushing hers. Why are you telling me this now? She smiled faintly, because you needed to know. I want to expose him, and now it's over. I nodded, gratitude and awe swirling in my chest. Do you want to come back and claim your inheritance? She shook her head. No. I prefer to be considered dead. My husband and new friends call me Monica now. I want it that way, free from the past, free from the shadow of my father and Oliver. She left me a small, elegant calling card. If you ever need me, call me. I watched her leave, hood pulled low, disappearing into the crowd. In that moment, I understood the depth of her courage and the weight of the secrets we both now carried. But I also knew the world we lived in wasn't gentle, and sometimes survival required a mask. The city skyline stretched before me as I sipped my coffee, the morning sun catching the edges of the glass high-rises. Everything I had endured, the lies, the betrayals, the losses, had led me here. Every truth I uncovered had strengthened me, and every fortune I inherited had empowered me. My parents, grandparents, and husband were all gone. But Angela was alive, free and safe in her chosen anonymity. And I was finally untouchable. The whispers of misfortune that once followed me were meaningless against the empire of wealth and power I commanded. Those who had underestimated me, those who believed they could manipulate and control me, those who had sought to harm me, they had all paid the price, one way or another. I set my coffee cup down, letting the warm ceramic rest beneath my fingers. The world might call me an orphan, a widow, a harbinger of death, or a survivor, but I knew the truth. I was more than that. I was a force shaped by every betrayal, every secret, and every death. And anyone who dares cross me in the future will learn the same lesson and face the consequences. I looked out the window and allowed myself a small, almost imperceptible smile. Justice, wealth, and power were mine, not by chance, but by design. The world had no idea just how dangerous I am. Thanks for listening to Unforgettable Stories. Like, share, and let us know what you think in the comments. Be sure to subscribe for more stories. See you next time.